conditions are not good. People are in situations that are not good. They're not healthy. They're not productive. And nobody speaks up. It's just silent. It's crickets. Nobody asks why. And I just find that interesting. Like, why don't we ask, why are we doing this? Or why are we not doing this? And we just sort of are like in this hamster wheel, or we're asleep, or I don't know what's happening, but nobody speaks up.
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians to overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be. Visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com because you're not in this alone. And don't forget, CME credit is also available when you listen with us. Just look for CMify in the show notes to learn how. You know, female urologists are a relatively rare find in the U.S., but their numbers are growing. And my guest today has been very successful in that field. She's also a talented writer and a certified life coach. So let's hear my conversation with Dr. Diana Londoño. I'm really excited today to be speaking with Dr. Diana Londoño, who is a urologist out in California, the Glendora, California area. Am I right about that, Diana?
Correct. Yes. Mm-hmm. Los Angeles, but the city is Glendora. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. It's really a pleasure to talk to you. I've read so much about you, and I'm really excited to get to hear some of the things that I'm curious about. So let's just begin the conversation as we always do with your beginnings. Your early life, you were actually born in Mexico City. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. I was born and raised in Mexico City, and I lived there until I was 12. And then at age 12, I came to the States. My mother and my father separated, so I came with my mother. And then I've been in the Southern California area basically most of the time, except for 4 years in Miami.
Can you tell us where you think your interest in a medical career came from, or were either of your parents involved in medicine, or did it come from someplace else?
No, my father was a businessman. I mean, he actually did not have a lot of formal education. He went, I think, up to probably third grade, but he was a businessman. He had a photography business, and it didn't really come, let's say, from him per se, because he was not in the medical field. And my mother, when she came to the United States with us, she actually became like a nurse's aide. So I guess she was sort of involved in caretaking healthcare profession, but it wasn't also that it was inspiring for me to go because of that she did. And actually, I did not have many or really any that I really knew of people in my family that were in medicine or healthcare. But I think my interest probably started or came because when I was around 20, I was 20 years old when, I would go back and forth sometimes in the summers to visit my father in Mexico City. And in the last visit that I went to see him, my father was, very good looking. He was a, very good looking Mexican man with beautiful blue eyes, kind of like this tan skin. And he was very proud of, of his looks and he, he showed he was very good looking. And when I last went to see him, and he was still like relatively young, he was in his 60s. When I saw him the last time, when I arrived in Mexico, he didn't arrive, meeting me at the airport, as he usually did, but he was actually in a wheelchair. And I didn't understand why he was in a wheelchair. I didn't understand why there had been a huge sort of decline in his health. And it wasn't until a little bit later that I sort of pieced together, because he actually died about 3 months later, but I didn't pieced together that he actually had metastatic prostate cancer. And he died from that. That was untreated, which is something that you do not see, usually, first of all, in the United States. And because, we have screening and, we have treatments, and you do not die of, metastatic prostate cancer very frequently, especially in a very short time. So basically, what sort of I pieced together that he had like metastasis to the spine, and, he was basically paralyzed from that. And then he again passed away, just a few months later. But it was really during that time when I was last there with him. Like I said, he was very proud. He was very good looking. And I really saw him in diapers. I mean, he was like like in a wheelchair and otherwise, in diapers and kind of being taken care of around the clock, which was, again, a departure from him, the man I knew as a father. And there was just something about understanding like dignity with illness, that it is quite important that when people are ill, to restore and keep and maintain dignity, even when you're ill. And, when we, let's say, go to the hospital as physicians, it's very interesting to me. I mean, you basically get stripped away of all your sort of the things that are kind of like your ego, right? Your clothes, your nice clothes, your possessions, your makeup as a woman, all these things sort of get kind of taken away, and you're left bare bones with a gown that doesn't close, in the back of your butt. So you're really quite vulnerable. And you're basically, not literally naked, but in a way, I mean, you all these things that we layer upon layer, when you're not in the hospital gown, you no longer have to, let's say, protect you. So it was sort of seeing him in this vulnerability, even though he was not in a hospital gown, but, he was in diapers, he was bedridden. And there's just an interesting dynamic that I saw there, that I had never experienced. I had never really been around, ill people or been in a hospital. And I think that really spoke to me and made me decide, I want to sort of be, not a physician, but I want to be like a healer. I want to be somebody that, can restore dignity, can help people during illness, when you're at this vulnerable state. And that sort of started me in the process. And I went back, I was in college and I went back, I guess it was probably, my sophomore year. And I decided, I want to go into medicine and I have to figure out what I need to do. And, down the road, all the stuff that you had to do. So I think that was for me how it sort of started and what fueled me to go into, because I didn't, I wasn't 5 years old when I dreamed to be a urologist and, and do rectal exams. That was not my dream, but, it really just was sort of the beginning. I want to do medicine, and I didn't know till later what sort of specialty, to go into. That was another decision, but that was the time, I think, where it all started.
That's a really powerful story, which I appreciate you sharing with us. And I hear a lot of stories, but I have to say, that sort of thing, a really, really personal experience with a dehumanizing disease, certainly tells a powerful story, and it obviously had a powerful effect on you. I want to ask you one other thing about your younger life. So you actually came to the U.S. at a very vulnerable age, at the onset of your adolescence, and I'm wondering, did that have any upsetting effect on you, and were there difficulties with the language, or what was it like for a 12-year-old to be suddenly uprooted and dropped down in a completely different culture? How did that affect you at that point in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question, and very observant. So yes, I think there's a magical age where the transition becomes a lot more challenging for children. And I have a sister; she's 2 years older, and I will say that definitely for her it was a lot more challenging. And I think the effects, have been seen just throughout her life because she was a little bit older. So I think her answer and mine, even though we're in the same household, would be very different. For me, we both went to private school in Mexico City. And so we did have half day English, half day Spanish, although we never truly spoke it, anywhere other than the classroom. So I had never really spoken English until I came to the United States. And then, we just came and it was like, okay, well, now you got to speak English because that's what it is. I mean, it's not like there's a choice,
You
but
make
we
it
did.
sound so simple.
We just like, I remember just being at the grocery store. I think it was Ralph's or something. And I was like, okay, well, I got to ask for it in English. And I did. And I didn't feel that difficult transition. I didn't feel like this uprooted sensation or this is going to be terrible. To me, actually, it was a good thing. My parents, clearly separated for reasons, and the reasons were that, my mother's narcissist and my dad was bipolar, and they really didn't have a great relationship. I remember just mostly a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming, and not a very sort of like loving home between them. I mean, they were loving to us, but they were not loving to each other. So to me, leaving that was actually, a great thing because it was not, I remember very vividly being younger and thinking like, I don't know what it's supposed to be like, but I definitely it's not supposed to be like this. There has to be a different way, a loving way, a home where there is love. And this is not the way. And I thought it was a good thing that we left. And I was very proud of my mother to leave without ever having had a job. She was a stay-at-home mother, and she came, and it took a lot of courage for her to leave and come to a different country, even though my grandparents live here, but, it's a different country. She had to work. She had to start from zero and work her way to a life and, buying basic things like a car and an apartment and all these things on her own, which she had never done. And she also didn't have a college education, things like that. So, I was glad. I felt the transition was not difficult for me. I really, just tried to take up advantage of any resource. And I really actually flourished a lot for whatever reason. And people sometimes ask me, well, what was the difference? How come you were resilient, or, you kind of stayed in a path to, let's call it quote unquote success, whatever that means. But, I don't know. I just decided I'm going to make the best of it. I'm going to use every opportunity. And I just went from there, and I didn't sort of look back or wallow in the sorrows of like, what if, or like, why me, or whatever it is. I just really used everything as an opportunity.
Well, you certainly did. And obviously were very successful with it. And I'm also interested in when you were, well, I gather it must have been sometime during your undergraduate education that you decided that you wanted to go to medical school. Is that correct? Or did it come earlier than that?
No, I mean, yeah, it was during the undergrad. Again, just when I came back from visiting my father, and then he passed away actually on my 21st birthday. And then I decided to start volunteering at the local, I went to Claremont McKenna College, and there was a local nearby hospital. So I started volunteering there in the family medicine department. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. But really, family medicine, I give props to them. It's not my personality, but they do fantastic work I could never do. But I started there, and then I decided, yes, I definitely want to do this. I love this. I love, really seeing patients and helping people. And I got to really, when I was there as a volunteer, quote unquote, it was in Pomona, the city where there's a lot of Latin patients. So I always got to go in because I would translate for the doctors. So to me, that was very fun because I got to kind of see more things, do more things because I was able to help them. And I saw that there was a need.
That was really educational for you.
Yeah, it was fun. And there was a need that I saw there's a lot of patients, and sometimes the doctors didn't speak the language. And so I was like, well, then I can do this. This is something I can contribute as well. So I really got very excited about it, and I decided to pursue medical school.
And when you got into,
and I did, and I even.
And when you got into medical school at UCLA, did it feel right from the start? I know those early years, the basic science years, can be sort of dry, and a lot of people wonder if this is what they really want to do. But what kinds of feelings were you having at that point, since you had taken the great leap?
Yeah, so that's a great question too. I actually for example, college. Some people love college. To me, college, the best part of college was when I went abroad to Spain for 6 months, and that was a great time for me. And two, when I ran cross country, those were probably my favorite times, and obviously my friendships. But apart from that, I didn't love college as much. But for me, medical school was just an incredible experience. I really loved medical school. I felt that the people there were so inspiring. We had my classmates starting from 18 years old to 36 years old, and they were so diverse and, backgrounds and, where they came from, and not just culturally or racially, but just experience. And to me, it was such an amazing group of, colleagues that were just doing amazing things. And it was inspiring to be there. It was a very positive sort of place, group, and I really loved it. I liked it even from the beginning. This basic science, we were the first class at UCLA where they switched the curriculum to a organ-based system, so it was a little bit different, and I really liked it. It was fun to, I guess, be a little guinea pig of the new system. But it was a nice system. I think it worked with my personality, and I really liked it. I never felt like, oh, this is not what I want to do. I thought yeah, bring it on. This is awesome. I really like it.
Well, that's a good thing. And did you actually, was it during medical school that you began to think that maybe urology was where you should be, or did that come later?
That came probably at the time of the rotations when we had to kind of decide what to do. I didn't know, again, about it at any time before that. I had to just choose, and it probably came my third year as I rotating through, trying to decide what do I want to do? And, I sort of either chooses you or your personality chooses it. I don't know if you don't know ahead of time. So for me, it was definitely a split between, okay, is it going to be a medical specialty or surgical? And it definitely was a surgical. I admire people that can, do differential diagnosis for 25 years, but that's not my personality. And that was difficult for me to sit through.
Results, right?
Yeah, I want results. I'm action oriented. I see a problem and I want to fix and I want to do it and get it done. And that's sort of surgery. So to me, patients that have retention, it's they have a problem, I'll solve it. I have the skills when it gets challenging and I get called after the, fifth person tries and I get it done. And then it's very rewarding. So it's just sort of my personality. So I really thought, okay, surgical. And then I just went down the list of each one. And I was well, neurosurgery sounds fantastic, but half of the patients are in the ICU. They're not even awake. I don't get to talk to anybody. This is not for me. Ortho, that sounds great, but I don't have time for the personalities, even though I really like the guys there, but and I really don't like broken bones either. So that's a problem. And, I just went down the list. And I thought, well, urology is surgical. You could be very medical, but not too differential diagnosis. It's much easier. And people are fun, right? We definitely have a little bit of a sense of humor. We're not so, we're not so uptight about things at times. I mean, how can we? We see penises and vaginas all day. You kind of have to have a little sense of humor. And so I thought, yeah, I want to do it. And again, my personality, I want to do something hard. I want to do one of the hardest ones, the more challenging to get into. And, that is one of the ones surgically. So I said, that's what I want to do. I want to do the difficult one. I want to do the one where there's not a lot of me there. And there aren't. There's 10% women urologists, and there's 0.5% urologists are, female and Latina. So there's not a lot of us. And I thrive in, being sort of different than others. To me, that is my superpower, is not my weakness. And so to me, it's yeah, it's awesome. This is what I want to do.
Yeah, you sort of anticipated my next question there. And that is, and I think it would be the question that a lot of people would like to ask when you're going into a specialty that is so heavily dominated by the opposite sex. You obviously had to have given that some thought, and I really want you to be as honest as you're willing and tell me if you experienced any pushback along the way, either within your own program or later on in private practice. How has it been with respect to your acceptance as a female?
Yeah, that is also a very good question. And yeah, in my program, I went to Kaiser Permanente, Los Angeles, and there were, let me think now, I guess my chief was maybe the second or third woman in the whole program's history. And so it was my chief. And there was somebody ahead of me, Melanie Warsaw, who's actually now the chief of, a big chief of Kaiser Permanente. But she was ahead of me. And then that was the other person. So yes, although in that sort of class, there was a chief, somebody above me and myself, that's kind of was a lot. But there had not been many, ever for the last 20, 30 years. So it was still sort of new, even though there were some other women there. But I never, ever felt during residency any challenge, any, different treatment from colleagues or from attendings. I did not feel that. Now, from nursing staff, I'm not going to say that was not the case, because we do feel it. Bias is real, and is usually overall women that tend to be the ones that are not as friendly or supportive, and especially nurses, sadly, are the ones that usually give us the hardest time, don't respect us as much, or treat us differently, sadly. And I don't, we can have a whole debate about this, but that's the only time maybe I did feel something different or different treatment. And even as an attending, I mean, there were a couple of times that I actually had my colleague be my assistant during a robotic surgery. And the nurses, instead of asking me, "Oh, Dr. Londoño, what do you want?" they would ask my colleague what they wanted. And I said, "Excuse me, it's not their case, it's my case." And it's not about the ego, but it's just about, I understand the dynamic that is happening.
Sure, it's about communication.
Correct. And it's about a little bit of respect. And so those are a few instances I have felt. And again, everybody has a bias. And I mean, this is sort of in a way a great platform, because you don't see what we look like. These are sort of the auditions, the music auditions where they don't see the person, and you don't have to have your bias of what people look like. But once they do, people will make assumptions just by looking at me, and or I looking at you. You make a lot of assumptions about what the person is or isn't. And many times those are not true, but they make them. And then they act according to their stories they tell their brain, which again, they may not be true. So, people make those. And what I say about that is, like, those are your opinions. Whether you like me, hate me, whatever it is, those are yours, and you get to keep them. I don't have any responsibility for them. I don't own them. And all that is about you and not about me. So I really just, go on my merry life. And, I don't take that stuff personally, because it's, I know who I am. I'm very confident in my skin. I love myself. And, not as a narcissist, but like, I truly do know like who I am. And so it doesn't affect me, the opinions that you may have, because those are yours. They're not mine. So again, when those things happen, yeah, that's okay. I mean, that's sad. Like that maybe you don't want to get to know me, or you don't want to treat me as nicely as a male colleague, or you're the nurse that brings my male colleagues coffee every morning and I sit next to them and you don't bring me coffee, I mean, that's on you. It's not on me, so I don't take that stuff personally at all.
Well, you certainly don't sound like a narcissist, but you certainly do sound like a pragmatist, and it has served you very well. And then as we move along in your career, interestingly, once you're finished with training and you're ready for practice, you decide to move to the opposite coast. What was that all about?
Oh, Miami. Yes. Well, my husband, he was in private equity, and he basically at the end of my training got a job to head the private equity division for Latin America for this company that he worked for. And so that meant that we would move to Bogota, Colombia. He's from Colombia. I'm from Mexico. And so that was the job. And I knew about that, about a couple of years before I graduated. And before I graduated, his job really was transitioning from San Francisco to LA, San Francisco to LA. And then when I was going to graduate, we were going to move just to Colombia. And so I said, yes, we were going to do that. But, as the time got closer and closer and closer, then I started researching what am I going to do in Colombia. And, there was like 6 urologists in Colombia total who are women. and most of them were doing pediatric urology. And so I said, what am I going to do there? Like, I know that your dad and your brother-in-law are never going to come to see me ever. And I don't want to do pediatrics. That's not what I trained. I don't have a fellowship. I do not want to do that. So I said, I can't really do this. And I just started looking for jobs, and I was like, Miami's close enough to Columbia. Let me see if we can get a job there. And I did. I just sort of last minute found a job, and he ended up commuting, now not from San Francisco, LA, but from Columbia to Miami every week. Yeah, and he did that for, about probably, I guess, 2 years or so, until then, I had my daughter, and, that was a little bit challenging to, one, not have any family in Miami, two, have a daughter that, was just born and we had never had kids. So the first one is a little bit of a challenge to do alone, and that he was traveling every week. So, and then I had a job and all this stuff. So yeah, some things had to change there too. But, so then they did as well. But that's really why we went to Miami.
Well, I have another, a little bit of an off the wall question, that you stirred my imagination. You were talking about how few, female urologists there were in Columbia. Do you think that existed, that reality existed because of a different attitude between the sexes in South America? Or
absolutely. Of course. Yeah, we cannot, no, absolutely. I mean, we cannot deny the different cultures in all of Latin America, not just Colombia or Mexico. I mean, it's a machista culture, and also not just the culture, but the, sexuality is sort of still very taboo. I mean, we don't talk about it at the dinner table. I mean, my family was a little bit more, more open about this, but many, 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 many families do not talk about this. And, even the fact that I'm a urologist, is sort of not really, it is advertised, but not so much openly. Let's say when I go visit my in-laws, it's sort of, yes, she is a doctor, but it's not like they really dive into it. So there's definitely a big component of machismo and all this. And I will say that, I'm very, very, very proud of my husband, who is Colombian, but, has been very comfortable. Because even if you were not Latin, I mean, I think some men may have a difficult time with our profession as urologists who are female. And especially because I don't do a lot of female urology, I do mostly men. And, he is very comfortable and very supportive, and it has never been an issue of my career choice. And if it was, we would not be married. But, he's been very, very supportive. And so, but absolutely, this is a big reason, of course. That is a very on point reason why there's so few of them.
Yeah.
And also, most women still, like, even though we're in 2022, I mean, there's a lot of women that still, are now working, and let's say his sisters are college educated, but they stayed at home, even though they all had a college education. I mean, their sort of job is to be home with the kids. And so even if you have a college education.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians for physicians to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests, whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics. Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview. So you finally made your way back to California, and make sure I understand this now. Are you in private practice where you are now? Or are you part of a group?
No, I work. I'm not. Yeah, I'm part of a group. Yes, yeah, I'm not in private practice right now.
Mm-hmm. And you've been there for. It's been quite a while. Right?
Like 5. Yeah, but more than 5 years. Yeah, a little more than 5 years. Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking you're pretty busy, and yet you find a good bit of time for some other things. You're a rather prolific writer. Have you always liked to write? Is that kind of therapeutic for you?
Yeah, I had never truly written anything, and you don't become a writer until you write something. That we get stuck in like, well, I'm not this, I'm not that, but you're not going to become that if you don't do it. And so for me, you're absolutely correct. It was probably about a year ago that I wrote my first article, which was the first one that I published and the first one that I wrote, like literally wrote. And I did it as absolutely, like healing. I mean, writing can be very therapeutic, and you never have to ever publish anything to be therapeutic for you. But for me, I was like, I'm going to try to publish it. And, I found out how to, and I didn't know how to do any of it or where you even submit things to. And I literally just had to Google this. And I just did it because it was a way for me to help me channel my emotions, help me heal. And that was all coming from my second round of burnout. And it was one of the things I did to help me and continues to help me to, again, channel emotions, channel my thoughts, share my voice, and really to say, like, I do have a voice. All of us have a voice, especially physicians, but any of us. And you do not have to have any fancy title, whether it's MD or not MD. Like, we all have a voice. And if it's not being acknowledged, let's say where you work or not, you can find many outlets. I mean, nowadays there's a lot of technology, right? There you can have a YouTube channel, you can write things and get them published. You can have a TikTok account. You can do anything you want, and you can do things that are passions for you, that fuel you, that energize you. And so that has been part of my healing and things that make me, wake up in the morning and stay up late and really work on this, that really are things that make me, again, very passionate. And it sort of goes back to, again, being a healer, and not so much the healer, but like I went to medicine because I care about humanity and humans, and I care about that connection when people are vulnerable. I care about that connection, being present with people. And then, yes, of course, along the ways, I want to be a good surgical technician and all these things. And I am that. I know how to prescribe and diagnose and do all that. But there's more to that in medicine than just being a prescriber and a surgical technician and knowing how to do that and, doing all these, if you do research, all that. I mean, that's very important. But if you lose sense of the person in front of you, if you lose sense of the person that is telling you their fears or their concerns and you're not listening, then I think we lose what this is all about. I mean, I think that is what it's all about. And sometimes we lose that, or it's been lost, or we never found it. I don't know which one it is. I mean, I'm still trying to, decipher it.
Yeah. You mentioned your experience with burnout, which I think anybody who is close to the medical profession nowadays knows that seems to be a big problem. And I uh, actually had, well, I don't know whether to call it an opportunity or not, but I practiced for 44 years, and I actually saw that ugly thing make its appearance. When I began my practice, nobody was really talking about burnout, and that's not to say that people were not frequently overworked and exhausted and all those things, but this burnout was a very new thing. And I'm interested, if first of all, that you talk to us a little bit about how that affected you. And I'm curious to know if that in some way led you into your other avocation, which is coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. They both did. So I've been burned out twice. Sometimes you get it once, sometimes you get it twice. Sometimes it just keeps happening. I don't know. But the first time was when I was in my first job after residency, and I just didn't have a day off for, I don't know, probably 9 months. I was like work Saturday, Sunday. And I sort of told myself, well, it's just only one patient I'm rounding on, it's not a big deal. But it really does accumulate that stress, the lack of rest, lack of just shutting off your mind. And it just became additive. And I got to a point where I was sort of like that squirrel in the street where, it's like, it's like panicky, doesn't know what to do. And there's obviously different levels of, I really think actually burnout is the end stage of stress, but I also have a different definition of it. But in the superficial one, you're at this end stage of stress response where, again, you either are just in panic mode or now you're just completely frozen or, different levels. But I was sort of the panicky squirrel stage. And I remember being outside the hospital room of a patient, trying to decide if I should put a Foley in a patient, and I could not decide if it was a good idea to put it in or not, because they had a sphincter and the risk of erosion, all these things. But regardless, it's a simple thing we do 300 times a day because we're like the Foley police, right? So we just put it in all day, and I couldn't decide. And I remember calling my chief that I hadn't spoken to in years, and calling him and asking him, like, what should I do? What do you think I should do? And I got scared because I couldn't decide. And I'm like, something must be wrong. Something is definitely wrong. Maybe my sugar, maybe I'm diabetic, maybe my thyroid. I mean, who knows what I'm some virus, something is wrong. So I need to go to the doctor. And I did go to the doctor, and which I didn't have one, but I found one. As a, doctors never have doctors. But I went to the doctor, and I'm waiting for all these tests for him to tell me something's going on with something physical. And he said, oh, here's your Zoloft. I'm like, what's Zoloft? And what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, you have like anxiety. And I think he was like drawing some maps of the parasympathetic, sympathetic. I don't know what he was doing. And dopamine, he was telling me about dopamine. I don't know. But I really was like, what do you mean? And I said, okay, well, I'll take your Zoloft. I don't know what that's going to do, but we'll see. And I went to therapy, and then, that's what it was. That's what it was. I mean, from the chronic stress, your neurotransmitters get totally, out of shape, and sometimes they need to be reset. And that's just a reality. And sometimes, yes, there is something in your neurochemistry that gets imbalanced, and you got to fix that. And also therapy has to help you. And I did that, and I got out of it. And then I became, I was pregnant. So, I decided to come off of Zoloft, although continue therapy. And I was fine. And I never really experienced it until, of course, COVID, which, has affected all of us in different ways. But now I just really internalize, everybody's fear and everybody's panic and my own panic. And now it was like completely in panic and fear stage, to the X degree, to the point that, again, of course, now I think I have COVID every day or have some physical problem. And because now it really went to truly, you can see this in my exam. So I had, couldn't sleep, of course. You don't sleep. You're waking up every 2 hours. I grinded my teeth. That I destroyed my molars, had to get a root canal. I had a tooth abscess. That was extremely painful for, 4 months, multiple rounds of antibiotics. I developed asthma, which I didn't have. And it was, confirmed on the, PFT test. I had debilitating chest pain. I had to wear this halter and have an echo to make sure, I didn't have some, problem in my heart, which I did not. I lost 10 pounds, which I don't have a lot to lose. I know you don't see me, but I don't have a lot to lose. I'm already quite skinny. And then at the end, I was starting to have like pain in my joint in my hands, and my rheumatoid factor was elevated too from that. Like I became like autoimmune from the stress being like on ridiculous amounts. And so, yeah, so then I had all these physical manifestations of chronic stress. And I was in a dark place. I was in a negativity vortex. I was not pleasant to be around. And, I was not joyful, let's say that. I probably hadn't laughed in like a year. And, I'm a urologist, I actually make jokes, but I really had not laughed. I had just been in a dark place. And I then found somehow like coaching, and I listened to podcasts. I got interested. It really was changing my life. I was thinking about things. And then I decided to become a life coach. But the thing is, I did not change because I said, I'm going to be a life coach. This is my plan B. I'm going to get out of medicine. I have it all planned out. I got to have these many clients. I'm going to make this much money, more than what I make in urology. I'm out. And I actually did not do any of that. I didn't change any of my job. All it changed was my brain, my thoughts, my mindset. And I actually didn't, I was not depressed. I didn't need Zoloft and all that this time, although, the other time I did. And I really just worked on my mind, my thoughts, and really then started to truly work daily on things to stop that sympathetic response and start the parasympathetic. So again, that's where I started like writing, and I started to write. And I remember, in like 2 weeks, I wrote probably 15, 20 articles, just like they were just coming out of me, like just write. And to this date, I think I've published probably about 35 articles in Doximity, Medscape, Kevin MD, Thrive Global, a lot of different outlets. I've been in podcasts, thank you very much. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity. And I've just been really expressing myself, expressing my true essence, and really finding a purpose. And that's what really happened on my burnout. I lay in bed and said, you can call it midlife crisis, but it really is a spiritual crisis. And I lay in bed and said, what am I good at? What am I supposed to be doing? Because clearly it's not medicine, I thought. And, I lay in bed and thinking about this. And then I had to come up with the answers. And so that sort of started all this. I definitely dove deeper, not just with coaching, but with meditation and other things, to really have time to answer all these questions and to work on these questions and to really daily practice, not just stuff that I preach. I really do all the stuff that I write about or talk about. I really do practice it. It has made the difference of living like a squirrel, or being in this negativity vortex, or being in a place of joy and happiness and enthusiasm and just being in a different place.
I want to run something by you. I mentioned to you that early in my career, which I understand was about the time that they invented fire, nobody really talked about burnout in medicine. And then one day we all woke up and there it was. And it occurred to me that in the early days of my practice, physicians didn't really answer to anyone other than the patient. Today, the majority of physicians, as you know, physicians and surgeons, are employed by someone. And even if they're in private practice, they have to deal with insurance companies and pharmacy benefit managers and hospital administrators and the whole affair. And I wonder if you think if the intrusion of all those other forces upon us and the invasion of our ability to make decisions thinking about nothing but the patient, if that has possibly contributed to this thing that we call burnout. Because believe me, back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, we worked long hours. But the landscape has changed. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's I think that, yes, that's very interesting. But I think that, 20, 30 years ago, we probably didn't see it because people didn't talk about it. I think it's not that it was not there. It was, but it wasn't talked about. And also, even though the landscape of all these other external forces was not there, the landscape about talking about this was also not there at that time. So I think is that bias of not talking about it. That's why we don't know it's there. Because if you don't ask the question or talk about the question, we're not going to know the answer. And right now we are just talking about it, getting data about it a lot more than we were then. So I think that is a difference. And I think that the fact that there's all these forces can, in a way, influence. I mean, if you look at the Medscape data, you're going to get the answer of what you're saying, that we don't have enough autonomy, that we don't have respect, that we have too many tasks, that the EMR is causing all this. But I think that, yes, that is a good start of the problem of why it is. And that's step one. But I think it's also a split from these external, let's call them forces, add sort of stressors to our life, but we have not become good at, and I'm not blaming the physicians, it's not a blame, but we have not become good about prioritizing our self-care, prioritizing our boundaries, saying no to these external forces, because now before they weren't there, so there was nothing to say no to. It was just you and the patient. But now there's all these forces, all these requirements, and they're kind of been put upon us, but we have not learned to say no, or to say, I'm going to stand up for this, or why are we doing this? And I think that is a difference. That if we actually used our voice, if we actually spoke up, if we actually did something, then we would have the power and we would change things. And again, I'm not saying that it's our fault and we are the problem, or we're not doing enough. I'm just saying I see it all the time that conditions are not good. People are in situations that are not good. They're not healthy. They're not productive, and nobody speaks up. It's just silent. It's crickets. Nobody asks why. And I just find that interesting. Like, why don't we ask, why are we doing this? Or why are we not doing this? And we just sort of are like in this hamster wheel, or we're asleep, or I don't know what's happening, but nobody speaks up. And somebody has to speak, and somebody has to put a boundary. Somebody has to say, why are we doing this? This is not normal. This is not good. This is not right. But we just continue. Like, it's just okay. We continue this sort of generational trauma in healthcare, that because it happened to me, it's going to happen to you. Because I had long hours, they have to happen to you. Because I didn't sleep for 30 hours, and you have to do the same. I don't think that is the way, but we continue that, and it has to stop. And until we speak up, we're going to be seeing these terrible, things. Because, I mean, I just came from this conference. It was called Women in Medicine. It was a Kaiser Permanente. I was a speaker there, and I was also doing some coaching. And, boundaries are very difficult. Learning to say no is very uncomfortable for people, including especially women. We have been socialized to be nice, to smile, to accommodate everybody else. And the most radical thing a woman can do is to want something. Like, I want this, or I do not want this. I mean, that is from a book called Unbound, but it is a very radical thing. People don't like it. They get uncomfortable when a woman says, I want this. I do not want that. And it takes a lot of courage for a woman to say that, and to just stand in that position and not be apologetic. Because we are apologetic. We're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I don't want to come. I'm so sorry. Like you come into an exam, I'm so sorry, I'm late. I'm so sorry. Like, why? It's like, no, thank you for your patience. I will now take care of you. I'm not so sorry. Although you can say I'm so sorry confidently, and that's another conversation. But most women I see, when they say I'm so sorry, it's like they become smaller. They shrink. Mm-hmm. They want to accommodate. Mm-hmm. No, go in there with your shoulders up and your chest, up, and say, thank you for your patience. Or, I'm sorry, but like with a confident tone. Do not shrink for other people. So I see that a lot.
There's a difference between being empathetically sorry and guiltily sorry.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's a difference to how you say it. And then you carry that throughout the day and throughout every interaction. Like you're so sorry. Oh, no, I'm not sorry for my existence. I am here. And so we have to, be strong and be courageous and speak up and use our voice and know that we're powerful. So I think we have lost that in medicine, that we don't have any power. I beg to differ. You have a lot of amazing people on your podcast that have been there, all the activists, right? Marion, I mean, all these really active. I mean, these are people that that have courage, that stand even in the face of being bullied, like that's a light word, being harassed, being threatened. They stand and they do what is right. They do what they must. When other people, with just one little tweet that was negative, they would just, fold and be like, that's it, I'm done, But these courageous women and men too, they stand when the wind is blowing them around, they still stand strong. And I think that is very inspiring. And it takes a lot of courage. And there's not a lot of that there. But we got to look maybe at the people that are doing that and get inspired and maybe learn something from that strength.
Well, Diana, you're very inspiring, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. It really has been quite delightful. But we've come to the point in the program where I'm going to get out of your way for a moment and give the program over entirely for you. So, audience, I'm going to sit quietly, and Dr. Diana Londoño is going to give us her personal prescriptions for success.
Well, thank you. So, I think the prescriptions for success would be, when you're trying to think about whom to get advice or inspiration from, like we talked about just earlier in the segment, I think the most important thing you can do as a man or as a woman is listen to your intuition. Your intuition is that inner voice inside you that guides you, that tells you that is the right answer. And you actually don't have to look externally to anybody, but it's within you. And the way to listen to this voice is to become quiet, to pause, because if you're so busy with all the to-do lists and all the things you have to do, you will not have the time to listen to the voice. It said that prayer is where you ask, but meditation or the quiet time, the pausing is where you listen to the answer. So if you're not pausing and becoming quiet, you're not going to listen to that intuition. And that intuition, you will know the answer is correct when you feel in your body that answer. If you feel peace and joy with that answer, that is the correct answer. When you feel stress, tightness, heavy, that is not the correct answer. So I think that is really important to seek advice, not from others, but from yourself. You have the answers. And probably the best advice I ever received was, nothing good in life can come when it comes from a place of anger or fear. Nothing, whether it's, a thought, an action, anything you do when it's based on fear or anger, nothing good will come of it. And it has to come from a place of love. And love is the answer. That is the best advice and the best knowledge I have learned, that love is the answer. When you're in doubt and you don't know what to do, how to answer to somebody or how to act, then think of coming from a place of love, and that will be the right answer. And some things, that would tell myself, and they're sort of a repeat, but if I would tell myself something 10 years ago is, yes, love is always the answer. Trust your intuition. And finally, kids have no return policy. This is not Costco. They will not take them back 5 years later, 7 years later, like your mattress. So they are forever. So don't have them nilly-willy. You have to know and be ready for them because they're a lot of work, but obviously they're a lot of joy. But you have to have them because you want them, not because the world, society, your culture, expectations told you should. You should never do what should. You should always do what feels right for you. So that is my prescription for success.
Well, there's a lot of wisdom in that, and I'm not surprised. You have obviously created or collected quite a bit of wisdom over your lifetime, and I am so grateful that you were willing to take the time and sit down and speak with us today. It's been a great conversation. Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to tell our audience where you can be found and where they can find out more about you. So what have you got for us?
So you can find me on my website. It's just www.dianalondono, LONDONO, like medicaldoctor.com. And that's a good way to start. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter, which is at Diana Londoño MD. I also have a YouTube channel where I house mostly videos from something I founded, which is Physician Coach Support, which is a free and confidential platform for physicians for support, in which you can go and make a Zoom appointment with any physician there that will support you with anything challenge you're having, discussion, idea, thought you want to have some support with. And everybody there is a life coach. And this is not about free life coaching, but it's about support using our skills as life coaches. So I founded that, and you can go on that website too to learn more about it. Definitely, just be inspired from the fact that busy physicians are there to help you because they care about you, they care about helping each other, they care about humanity, and they know that there's a way where you don't have to be suffering and be in grief and be in anger and be in burnout and overwhelm. So we're there for support. And so in any of these platforms, you can find more about me. If this is interesting, fun, connect with me. I'd love to definitely have more conversations about any of these topics. I literally can talk about this for hours, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I'm grateful for this, great conversation, this platform, and to Rhonda, who I met, and she's just a fantastic woman who has built this, and she's very humble about it all, but she is quite amazing, founder and CEO of MD Coaches, and just some force to reckon with as well, and quite inspiring as well.
Well, thank you for those thoughts, and thank you for calling out Rhonda Crowe. She is really the best boss that I've ever had, and I really enjoy working for her, and I'm glad you're impressed with her as well. And last but not least, let me say once more, I don't know how to thank you appropriately for taking the time to be with us, but I am grateful that you were able to join us on Prescription for Success. Thank you so much for joining us today. We would really appreciate a review from you, and a 5-star rating helps give our podcast much more visibility. That helps us reach lots more listeners. Also, please visit our Patreon page, where you'll find membership-only material, including personal rapid-fire Q&A sessions with our guests. And to be sure you never miss an episode, check out our website at rxforsuccesspodcast.com to subscribe. While you're there, learn how to get CME credit from CMify just by listening. Special thanks to Ryan Jones, who created and performs our theme music. And remember, be sure to fill your prescription for success with my next episode.